Okay, so for my 31 Days of Oscar review series, I definitely had a select amount of movies that I wanted to review. Basically, like I record them all in kind of lumps and, a couple at a time, maybe a couple of weeks, just so I have them all ready and stuff. And still working on basically the final list for all the movies that I want to review. Definitely a movie I wanted to review was Capote. Definitely a movie I always watch around this time, around Oscar time, because it is one of my favorite kind of Oscar movies. I guess it's definitely something I like to revisit. Definitely, it was kind of a surprise that it did end up getting a nomination for Best Picture, which I've always thought was cool. Definitely, I would want to talk about, how much I love the movie, how great I think it is, and in particular, how brilliant, how extraordinary, how perfect Philip Seymour Hoffman's performance in the movie is. I I was not expecting under these circumstances to have to record this review. Not expecting that at all. Of course, sadly we lost Philip Seymour Hoffman recently. I mean, it feels like I don't know how much time has passed. I don't know when I'm going to upload this. Or, it feels like it was yesterday. It feels like it was a year ago. I don't believe it. I really don't. I can't even process it. It's just an immeasurable loss. Immeasurable. He was one of the great actors of this generation, of any generation. Such a huge loss, such a sad thing to think about. But I mean, I don't want to make this a video where I'm eulogizing him for the whole thing. But I mean, definitely, it's just a huge loss. That we lost him. I can't begin to say that. But I do want to not again not make this a whole kind of eulogize Philip Seymour Hoffman video. Instead, I do want to celebrate his work and celebrate this great movie, Capote. That again, I love. This is a great movie. Very very unexpected kind of story that you don't see too much, especially like this was not even 10 years ago this movie came out. Um, Definitely unique, definitely something that really no movie like it. I mean, there are definitely movies about writers and about kind of their obsessions, but this movie, just as the actual case of the real Truman Capote, is one like no other. Basically, I mean, the movie is directed by Bennett Miller, telling the story of the period in Truman Capote's life where he was writing his novel in cold blood, and how innovative it was, making it a nonfiction, but a story in itself, and collecting his work and kind of the process where it starts out kind of interestingly enough and uh, almost fun enough for himself, but then it takes a turn towards tragedy and towards just self destruction, basically. I mean, you see the process of this movie and of Truman Capote and his inner turmoil in this movie, and it's quite something. It is quite something. Basically, I mean, like when the movie starts out, it does you kind of soak it in, and kind of the locations, the color palette of the movie is kind of like a washed out like old time. The movie mainly takes place in some parts in New York, other parts, main parts in a small town in Kansas who was affected by the murders of two men. And Capote doing a research, and kind of what I liked about the first maybe third of the movie, first quarter maybe, is the dynamic between Truman Capote and Harper Lee, his friend, and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Kathleen Keener, who have a great chemistry in those scenes, and you can sense their friendship and that it is this real thing, and how they're kind of helping each other, and kind of how she is kind of she does her own thing, but she sees how strange Capote works about his way to get what he wants. I mean, he is a manipulative person, and there's that one great scene in the train where, the bad guy he he takes the bags and he's like, "Oh, Truman Capote, I'm so pleased to meet you. Your great book was the best. Just when you think they couldn't get any better." And she's like, "Wait a minute. You paid him, didn't you?" And it's like, "What?" And that's great. So it kind of gives you an impression, and just because he is such a personable, just this larger than life, like short, tiny man, but a larger than life figure, which is kind of like what I think the poster art kind of establishes too. He's like just towering over everything. But he like schmoozes with people, and he kind of titillates them with stories about celebrities, and he gets in good with them. And yeah, I mean, just how easily he can manipulate people to get the information that he wants in order to write his novel. But then when it takes the turn is when he does meet with the two young men who committed the murder. Particularly Perry Smith, played in a wonderful role by Clifton Collins Jr., who I think he should have got a nomination for this. I'm surprised he didn't. I mean, I was definitely really gunning for him that year, but unfortunately not. But definitely a great performance by him, and just kind of how his manipulation is sort of not working, but mainly because he surprisingly and unexpectedly has so much in common with this man, and how they both had kind of rough, well, rough is an understatement, but bad childhoods, and how he sees himself in him, and their bond. I mean, basically, what they accuse Capote of is falling in love with him, but not like let's run away together kind of falling in love, but a different kind of the love that an author would have for his own character. So, I mean, you always hear about authors, great writers pouring their souls into their characters and into their work to tell their story, to create these characters as real person. But in the meantime, Capote, he's using this person for a character in his novel, which is a real person, and so he is pouring his heart and soul into this person. But it's a real flesh and blood person. But in many senses, it is a reflection of himself. And so I thought that was very interesting. I mean, like the love that an author would have for their characters, but in this case, it's a real person. So that's kind of where the conflict begins, because essentially, though his book is going well, it's in the preliminary stages. He's getting close and close to the ending, but it does not have an ending. The ending that he needs to have is for these two guys to die, to be executed. They're on death row, and that's kind of where his conflict lies, and why it pretty much, I mean, tears apart at him, and causes this horrible despair that anybody who is kind of familiar with Truman Capote always sees him as like kind of a light, fun, the talk show circuit Capote, the murder by death cameo Capote. So though it does show in many scenes, especially like in some of the early scenes, it does show a Capote that is a lot personable, but it does show kind of just how any kind of intense and innovative writer would have a darkness within him. And because he does this novel in such a way that it is a true story and it is real life unfolding before him, and he's almost in so many ways pulling the strings, I mean, it's just incredible, the progression that this movie takes, and the conflict that he has, and how effectively Philip Seymour Hoffman gets it across. Because I mean, basically, I do think I think this is one of the greatest roles that he's had, probably his best performance, well deserving of the Best Actor Oscar that he received for it. Because essentially, I mean, I don't see Philip Seymour Hoffman. I mean, like some moments I can kind of like, okay, yeah, it looks like him, but he's just completely overtaken by this character. Not so much, oh hey, it looks like the real Capote. Great impression. No, it's more the character of this particular story, which is what I found so interesting. So I saw that character this whole movie, not not a hokey impression, but a real flesh and blood character that's suffering real conflict, and I think Philip Seymour Hoffman does an incredible job. Incredible. Well deserving of his Oscar, as I mentioned. Bennett Miller was also nominated for directing the film. Film was nominated for Best Picture, which was a surprise. Again, it didn't really get too many precursors in the awards circuit, what have you. And I think it was well deserving of a nomination. It didn't win anything else except for actor, which I guess is fair enough. Also nominated for Kathleen Keener for Best Supporting Actress, which I honestly think she should have won. I mean, it's almost like a yin and yang kind of thing with Capote and with Harper. As his friend, just kind of standing by the wayside and seeing him consumed by this guilt and obsession, it was just really, really an incredible and understated performance by Keener as Harper Lee. So I thought she does a terrific job and a great supporting cast all around. I mean, you got again Clifton Collins Jr. You have Chris Cooper playing the sheriff of the town, the head of the Bureau of Crime. And Bob Balaban as his publisher, which I thought was cool. So I mean, definitely it's Truman Capote who is the main event of the movie, the main character, of course. But definitely, I mean, you can't have a movie this good without a great supporting cast, which this movie does have, and a great and unique story. At the time, I mean, I did see it in the theater. I mean, this was Philip Seymour Hoffman's time. It really was. I mean, before this movie, he was that guy. He was that guy in Boogie Nights. He was that guy in Twister. And then kind of, those more who would follow his work more would be like, okay, that's Philip Seymour Hoffman in Love Liza. That's Philip Seymour Hoffman in Owning Mahoney. And, when this movie came out, he wasn't that guy. He was Philip Seymour fucking Hoffman, Oscar winner, well deserving of the Academy Award. And it was responded really well by audiences, I think. Definitely, a lot of people really liked the performance, and everybody was doing their Truman Capote impressions, hello, stuff like that. So sorry, that's horrible. But it was kind of an infectious love for this character and the real person that he was based off of. So that was always something that I liked about the movie, that it could take this persona. One of the most interesting, people of last century or so. One of the more interesting authors, and humanizing him and showing the darkness within him, and showing this story that it does unfold in a really careful way, in a really not slow, but just in a progressive kind of way, where it's an absolute necessity to do so. Because otherwise I don't think it would have the same effect if they altered the timeline in any way, made this take place within a couple of days or whatever. I mean, it just does effectively show the writing process, where several years go by in this movie, and him preparing in the novel, and visiting Perry in prison, and writing and talking to his publisher, and more and more in the periphery is his personal life. And how it takes over him, really, and how he becomes a character in his own novel, and how it depends on someone who he finds a great not camaraderie, but rapport with, having to die. And that final scene, well, not the final scene, but that, near the ending, before the hanging, when he visits the two men and he says goodbye, that is, oh my God, that is one of the greatest scenes that I've seen. Some of the best acting from Hoffman. Truly, truly incredible. Really, it hits you hard. I mean, that was kind of like the purging moment of the movie, where, he's supposed to be this calm and collected person. He's supposed to be in control. He is a manipulator. He is in control of the situation. He gets what he wants. And, here he is breaking down and finally being manipulated by himself. So that's, the ultimate kind of poetic justice of the character, I guess. So it definitely, shows Capote as an interesting character, and it is an enigmatic story. It's definitely something that provokes a lot of thought on the writing process, and particularly in this eccentric and one of a kind writer. So I thought it was a fantastic movie. Definitely deserved being nominated for Best Picture. I'm so glad it did, because that kind of heightened its popularity. So I'm glad that happened. And of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman. So happy he won his Oscar for it. Well deserved, incredibly well deserved. It wasn't even a competition that year. They should have just said now's the time for Philip Seymour Hoffman's award. But yeah, great performance, great film. Philip Seymour Hoffman will be incredibly missed. No words can describe that, but he has left a wonderful legacy of great work. In particular, this one. It's just a great film. So if you haven't seen it, please, get on that immediately. So yeah, that'll do for my review of Capote, and thank you for watching.